No. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, John.
Hi, Bruce. Hi, John.
Hi, Danny. I'll tell you, I look forward to getting to get this tech stuff. You know, my computer mouse went dead just as I was about to go in. Unbelievable.
Don't do that, John.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's working, Bruce.
Yeah.
Hey, Bruce,
Hey, John.
what does CPC stand for?
Community Preservation Committee.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations, Bruce.
I was saying my mouse went dead just as I was supposed to click on. It's really been an adventure. I look forward to getting together at town hall. But I'm not quite sure. Does anybody know what's happening with Rebecca? She's
Yeah, I asked and got no answer.
I thought she was gone.
oh, maybe. I mean, this is the routine has been for, initially Mia, and then Mia left, and then Rebecca to sign in. So I haven't practiced this, and it isn't that difficult. I'm sorry we didn't start it earlier.
Did you get Peggy's note?
Yeah,
She said something about her Comcast being shut off. Or
right.
Huh.
So hopefully she can find another way to access in. We need one more at least.
Well, I told her if she couldn't do that, she could always join in by phone, but she would rather see our smiling faces.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, here's Fred.
John, how long is the dredging supposed to last? To the end of the year?
Yes. They start the North Channel 1st of November. That actually shouldn't take that long. It's fairly short, full of stuff, but it's short.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard the banging all night or anything like that, so I was curious.
What the Marine Advisory Board is beginning to work out now is what they call maintenance dredging, which they look forward to every 5 years, something like that. Try to keep things in hand.
Is there any thought about co-purchasing a dredger, John, or anything like that?
No, they've just started to work on that. I don't know what their plan is.
well, Fred joined us. Now he's leaving.
Right, so we have a quorum. Let's see if Peggy can make it in. Lynn
Well,
also
Fred-
didn't say that she wasn't going to be here, but sometimes comes in a little late.
How you doing, Fred?
Oh, pretty good.
That's good. I was looking at one of our pictures from the walk around Duck Pond and all that. And you were front and center.
Oh. I tried to walk the new site along the Herring River and I got bombarded by mosquitoes. So I
Yeah.
haven't walked it yet.
No, I let this stuff dry up and it should be better. And choose a windy day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was surprised. I did hiking, but the weather has been lousy enough for biking. Except the last couple of days, one at the Atlantic White Cedar Swamp, and the mosquitoes were not a problem. I mean,
Huh.
it's some of the up towards Duck Harbor. It's really been pretty bad,
Yeah.
but I was pleasantly surprised. Right. Well, one more minute. If Peggy doesn't make it, is somebody willing to just start until she can sign in?
Start.
Start keeping track of the meeting, the secretarial.
I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh,
Bruce,
yeah.
Bruce, you've got a recording going on. Of course, there's Peggy S.
Here's Peggy.
There she is.
Aha.
Aha.
Unmute,
Peggy.
Peggy.
Hello, how are you? Sorry, I'm a little late. I'm multitasking.
Okay. Well, Lynn did not say she wasn't coming, but if she comes, I'll let her in. So why don't we start the meeting, 4:04. The first thing is the agenda for today. Any corrections, additions? Okay, I move to accept.
I move to accept the minutes,
All in favor?
excuse me, the agenda.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay. All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
second, I'm sorry.
second.
All in favor? Okay,
Aye.
any noes? Okay. Next for the meeting, for the minutes from the last meeting, which was back in July at this point. Any corrections or problems with the minutes? The only thing I had, Peggy, is a real minor one, is that twice, once at the bottom of the first page and once on the second page, it mentioned the AmeriCorps members coming in. It sounded like it was a summer internship, and it's actually an all-year internship.
Oh,
Just right-
we'll
just
not
right
have an
next-
intern until next year.
Next
If I
year.
change
I
it
mean,
from next summer to next year,
right,
does that correct that?
that
Okay.
is correct, but right now, none of that's true, but
Oh.
that would be the right. Okay.
Okay. you.
Okay, I think I'll skip. We'll get to my concerns as we go along. Anything, Tom, from your perspective?
Well, the only thing is that I thought everyone should be aware of, and probably is this document that I think Denny sent out initially, the Open Space Handbook, a guide to community conservation. It's published by UMass, and it's a terrific document. If there's those of you that are on the subcommittee for doing the plan should look at it carefully. There's lots of resource material in there, and websites, and they even mention the fact that they might give you a hand with it. But
Huh.
so
Well, we actually, John, all of us had read it, and I agree with you, Tom. It's just a wonderful document, and John actually made copies for everybody at the last meeting. some of the things that we found sort of serendipitously, like that, the grant that included the land grant and 5-year plan is listed in there. It's not listed on the state's main website. So it just, as far as I'm concerned, it's a great model for how to do these things. I'm sorry that the 5-year plan has got to be so involved. But
And it's very readable.
That guy does a heck of a good job on that sort of stuff. And Bruce, I think you've met him at some seminar you went to.
what was his name?
Now I'm blanking. But he's the main author. He's at UMass and he does a heck of a good job.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I'm blanking, Lynn,
Oh,
but it's on that report.
hi, everyone. Sorry, late.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Okay, for property management, anything, Fred?
No, if it gets, colder and get rid of some of the mosquitoes, I'd like to continue looking at our unprotected properties on the town, that the town has, which I started last year.
Right.
So,
So maybe as we get down a little bit, we can talk about whether Ryan is asking us to look at all of the unprotected properties, and he has a different agenda, but I think we may be able to meld our two agendas is what I was thinking. The only other thing I'd mention, Fred, is both when I was doing it pretty regularly and you've been doing it, we every year we mention working with CONSCOM or with the Conservation Trust, and just to bring that up again, Denny, if we can work, somehow we both do our own thing. We come up with the same results, I'm sure, but if
Well, we'll be happy to. Actually, Mike Fisher is out wandering around the various sites to see if there is a work day to be done this fall.
right,
We know that there are 3 trees that fell over on Walker, and so we're gonna. He tried to do the one by hand, but he's asked for a chainsaw, which is quite a stretch for Mike. He'll be looking at the others, and we'll give you a list, and we'll let you know what we're thinking of in terms of a work day. So.
okay, sounds good. All right, trail guides, Lynn?
There are 2 at the printers at the moment, Box Turtle and Drummer Cove. He said he should have a sample for us he's hoping this Thursday, because I'm going to be away traveling Friday and Monday, and then printed the following week. And I missed the approval of the minutes. Did anything change to do with the trail guides there?
No.
Oh, because it mentioned 3 and it didn't have the names of Drummer Cove and Box Turtle. It didn't have one or the others.
Oh, you mean, the minutes
Yeah,
from July.
It had Drummer Cove, but not, you're correct. It had Drummer Cove, Lynn, Walker, and Pilgrim Springs, but you're saying it should have been Drummer Cove,
and Box Turtle.
just those.
Sorry about that.
I thought we didn't have 3 that were in process.
2 that are in process for being printed. There are more.
Yeah. But in July we're,
Yes.
okay.
So yes, so those Denny and I looked at them, and we should be fine with these getting printed. They were the ones we were most short of copies of.
Okay.
We have some printing. We have some copies of the Herring River Overlook,
Right.
and those can go into the folders. So
Right.
I know you mentioned you didn't do that, Lynn, but I think they belong in there.
No, I didn't do that with the last ones I assembled. Was before I realized they'd been printed, Denny. But I have more to do.
Okay.
I'll add them. Yeah.
And, you know,
Denny,
next,
you,
I'm sorry.
you will be, Conservation Trust will be paying for these as always, I think it says.
Yes,
But-
yes,
Thank you,
it's in our budget.
thank you.
And the next one, and I do think before the next time we have a meeting, we should change this elementary school to education, because there were some ideas about
Saw that.
what to do with education, and I think to broaden that is the way to go. So Peggy, you want anything?
Yes, via email, Bob introduced me to Mary Beth Rodman right as school was beginning. And she said she's very much looking forward to continuing, that she'd gotten good feedback from the teachers in the past. They have 2 replacements at both 3rd grade and 5th grade. So there are some new teachers coming in there. And she had said, once school was opened and they got the kinks worked out, she would love to make arrangements to meet, and it might be virtually, but she was waiting for things to settle down a bit. So I will reach out to her probably within the next week or so.
And there were some other ideas concerning education in general. Part of our mission is to work with people. Anybody who was writing about that want to speak about it? Well,
I mentioned to Peggy that we did a session about 10 years ago at Fres Hall, which was pretty well received, but as I mentioned, it was preaching to the choir. So,
Yes.
On the other hand, Denny, as Bob Jackson reminded me, that was when I decided to join the Open Space Committee. I've been on for quite a while, so even though it's true you're preaching to the choir, there may be interested members who are coming in. There may be some positives that come out of that.
I think it's a great opportunity to talk about our efforts and identify the people who are efforting.
Right.
Yeah. And I think also the article that the Conservation Trust had about their anniversary in the Provincetown Independent was a good one. And my sense is that early on, the Independent was needing more filler. They seem to have no trouble right now with we have a lot to cover in just Wellfleet alone with budget issues and so forth. But I thought maybe mentioning to them, proposing that we do something, and it could be a way to get kind of more local people involved. They seem to, the paper seems to like to focus on people in the community, what they're doing, what they're thinking, how they got here. And I thought that could be a good angle if we came up with something about my favorite walks, and it could have to be bigger, like on the Outer Cape. But that could be a way where we talk about how those properties have come to be available to the public, and the process of open space, conservation, protection, and so forth. And reminding people that those properties are available and they should get out and enjoy them.
Peggy, just one correction. That article was in the Cape Codder.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I do have a copy of it that I printed out, but I didn't get the header. Thank you.
Okay, and the idea even of taking a walk and exposing people to some of the properties was an interesting one.
And I'd be interested, if we have time in the meeting, to hear how the WCT walk went at Kennecott.
It didn't.
Yeah, no,
It didn't.
It didn't.
didn't happen.
Oh, it didn't? Oh, okay. That's probably important to know why and so forth as we talk about making plans in the future.
Called COVID.
COVID.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But in that regard, we tried maybe 3 or 4 years ago during the summer to hold some walks at a few of the sites. I know for sure we did Pilgrim Springs, and we got about 4 or 5 people there. And then we tried for another site, and I can't remember where. But that fad quickly died down, unfortunately. So it took a lot of work to get it set up. But
yeah. Yeah, and this, if we're gonna do mainly the trails, it should be smaller than what you guys do, Denny. It's, the walks are shorter.
Oh, no, yeah, no, and it was meant to be something different, Bruce. It was
Right.
not meant to replace that. In
Right.
fact, our big problem with the guided walk in Wellfleet, as it's called, is that we get too many people.
Like Oyster Fest.
Right.
Yep,
A good problem, but a problem.
yep.
Okay.
You increase the mileage to 8 or 10 or so. Maybe.
That'll lose you some people, but not these damn hikers. Okay, Conservation Trust, just to say, I have not been up at the trail yet, but the trail is up and going and the parking is there. I'm not remembering any other land issues. Denny, anything from your perspective?
Well, we're working with the Herring River Group to dedicate that property to being basically collateral for a loan that they're getting from NACA, which is North American Wildlife Conservation. I guess. And and that should work, but it's in process. So, and then there isn't anything really new going on. So I think, are you going to talk about the housing partnership meeting?
Yep, that's next one after Friends of the Herring River. And because I think there's maybe quite a bit there with that. Okay, Friends of the Herring River, Lynn?
Well, Senator Markey visited the site of the new Crescent Neck Bridge, where the existing dike is, and spoke in support of it. And the review of 2 permitting applications is going well. I'm wondering, John, you're here, so you might be able to help me with this. Dale mentioned that the Friends of Herring River submitted a grant for the town of Wellfleet to receive $589,000 from MVP, and this was awarded. What is MVP? Do you know?
I'm sorry.
That's in the handbook that that we have a copy of. It's
Mass vulnerability. The V is vulnerability. And it's the MVP. It's really a grant program by the state to try to do something about vulnerability to climate change and sea rise.
And then, thank you. And additional grants from NOAA and DEP have been awarded. And then they have notice of intent will be filed with the Conservation Commission in Wellfleet and Truro in October. And then public hearings will be held. And John, do you have any more to add?
No, that last is significant and important. And so there may well be a request from Friends of Herring River for support.
Right.
Did Markey imply that there might be money in the huge infrastructure bill for some of that? I wasn't clear on that.
Yes, he did. He basically said there's a pot, go apply, see what you can get, but he didn't say that it was committed.
Yeah.
I was a little bit more optimistic. I thought that's what he said, but I think he'd be looking out for it too.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, things are really seems like moving forward very
Right.
nicely with that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, the housing partnership. So John and I went to a meeting that the partnership had asked us to attend to talk about common interests, et cetera. Denny was there as well. You want to talk about it, John? Or
Yeah, the partnership was wondering how they could coordinate with Denny and this committee in purchasing land and also how to use the land. And I think they asked, Denny made a good point. in that you can't just ask for it. There's a process that Denny has to go through. There's a process that we have to go through, and that's where the coordination has to occur. I got the sense that they were hoping we would all cough up land, and it's not going to happen that way. The idea is they are looking for some land to put up more affordable housing. Denny and Bruce?
Yeah, one of the things I'd say is that, we're in a different place, I think, as part of the, we're a town committee, and we may sign on with Ryan if we can work this out to do an inspection. Fred's doing some of it already to look at properties. Now, some of these properties we've, in the past, have recommended going to Conscom, and they have. Others, we have recommended that when Seeloft was trying to sell them, that we didn't see them as high priority and they get sold. So I see our role as somewhat different. I think we can work quite directly with them. Danny, the Conservation Trust is in a different position. Yeah, do you want to talk about it, Danny?
Well, yeah, because we're a private institution and we are funded by our supporters. We have a mission, which is conservation of land. And developing of any housing is not in that mission. But there is a perception that we're in competition. And I try to point out to people that we're not really in competition. Most of the stuff that we're interested in has conservation values that are important to us and to the town. And so that's our real goal, is to chase after conservation values. There's some land that we have where people may question why isn't that in affordable housing, and an easy example of that, or one kind of example of that, is the Herring River Overlook, where that's not affordable housing land, that's high priced land, and the person who was giving the land wanted the land to be in conservation. And so we have to take into account our donors' requests and perspectives on these issues.
Right.
There are others where we have some conservation restrictions, and I tried to impress on that committee that we always go through and ask the donor of the conservation restriction, have you considered affordable housing? Because I just don't want to get us into a position where we have to be what appears to be against what affordable housing is trying to do. And I can think of a couple of ones where we have some excess acreage that is buildable, but the donors really didn't want any more housing to be around, and they wanted that land conservation. And there's not much we're going to do other than just try to conserve that land. An easy example of that is Gerald Holton down off of Cove Road, where he had about 9 acres that we put under a conservation restriction. And in order to develop that land, you would have had to go through a subdivision proposal and all that sort of stuff. But that's not what he wanted. And so we met with him and took the conservation restriction. We don't pay money for conservation restrictions. And we've never bought a buildable lot at full market price. And we're not going to be able to afford that. So I don't think there's much competition. We do consider affordable housing when there are possible circumstances, but other than that, not really.
Yeah, just to say a little bit more from where we are, we have a set of criteria, and we'll talk about that Fred sent around. And from my perspective, part of our job is when there are pieces of property that really meet a number of those criteria, then that's very hard for me to see, even if you can argue that there's a piece of it that may be buildable. And I think of the Freeman Way property. No, we didn't vote against that. Even we just let the Housing Partnership and Authority know that we did have concerns about it, and they said, okay, let's back off. But it's rare. Most of the property that we go after is really ACEC, water connected, et cetera. Denny's in a different position, and that people come to him and say, listen, I'd like to put my land in conservation. It's a great opportunity, but that's the decision of the person who owns the land. And I do hear you, Denny. You can say, okay, would you consider affordable housing, but not. The other thing I'd say is that there were two projects where we were discussing, you know, the combination. One of them is Howard Court and the other one's the Hall property. And both of these properties, we were considering taking, call it 4 acres at Howard Court, and using that for housing on the top. And then the rest of the land would be put into conservation. You know, to be frank, that's what ended up happening. It went into a Mesa review, and you know, but instead of affordable housing, we have, you know, the typical housing that's up there, including some seasonal stuff. And so, you know, I see that frankly as an opportunity missed. And for the Hall property was trickier. We're asking a lot of money. But anyway, I think both of these are models about how we could work together and how we could use, you know, conservation money, the open space money for CPC to help support some of the housing stuff. So we let them know that. The land that is in conservation right now, under CONSCOM, has to go through the state legislature before you can undo it. And so it is land that's protected. It's why we do it, is to get the land protected. And it's not something that we can sign off on and say that the housing should go there. But the last thing I'd just like to say is if we do, again, how this check of the other town properties would happen, it's still up in the air, but that's a great opportunity, I think, to look at other town properties and say, are there any that we would consider for affordable housing? And, you know, usually you say, aha, here's one that got missed. And there's big strings attached or problems. But anyway, it's worth making the attempt. Anything else, John or Denny, with that?
The only other issue I wanted to bring in was the 95 Lawrence Road. And the task force is going through review of the 3 proposals that came in. 2 are very close to each other at around $20 million, and the other one comes in at 14. And I don't, the 2 that at around 20 are very similar in terms of their structure, not so much what the buildings will look like. And the one at 14 is, I think, a bit challenging, but they're going to make a recommendation at the next select board meeting. I think that's on the 26th, and we'll see where they are. In the couple of meetings that I've sat in on, they've been fairly diplomatic about making any comments about the merits of the different proposals. You can see the presentations online through the city website.
Anybody else? Okay, CPC, Fred?
CPC, okay. Well, we're going to talk about the needs list, and I don't know whether we'll wait to do that, I guess. I just say that since we met last, the CPC approved a request from the Housing Authority for $210,000 for their buy down program, and that will be submitted to the next town meeting. The other request was for the elementary school playground to rebuild it, and the committee decided that they should take another look at that to see whether it would be better as a smaller grant or loan. They're talking about maybe making that a loan rather than a grant for planning. At this point, they don't have any detailed plans. They just came up with a figure based on what they saw was spent in Eastham and Orleans. And so they have a figure of 300 and some thousand, but no details. So they've asked the committee to look at it from like a grant or loan for planning purposes.
I didn't know the CPC could lend money. They can borrow money, but they can't lend, I didn't think.
Well, they were loaning it against the capital improvement. They applied for capital improvement money, but they were not able to fit it in, so it would be for 3 years. So the idea was to give them some money to get started planning.
Okay.
Okay, NRIB, Tom and John?
Well, I can start, and John, you can fill in. I mean, we're starting to look at this pond management issue in Wellfleet, and there was a preliminary meeting with a subcommittee of Laura Hewitt and Herb Stalder. Is that how you pronounce it, John? Anyway.
Elder, yeah.
Yeah, and John, you were part of that too, weren't you? Or was Sophia?
No, just Herb and Laura.
Well, they met with Sophia Fox, you know, the son, one of the ecologists at the seashore, and apparently, I mean, there are many issues, not the least of which that she's telling them that each pond is different in terms of its ecology and things that need to be looked at. So basically, they're at we and the rest of the group are at a point of just setting up some criteria, data gathering, you know, what are the critical issues, water quality, invasive plants, the various flora and fauna of the ponds, and what is there to do or not to do about it, and so on. And there's a couple of derelict properties that are around the pond that may be contributing to degradation and so forth. So that we need to deal with the seashore about. So it's at an early stage. John, any?
Well, I guess the big picture is the quality of the Wellfleet ponds is still very good. When you move further down Cape, places like Eastham, Brewster, they have a lot more problems. So what we're trying to do is be sure that we stay that way.
Okay, sounds like a good plan. Okay, to go down.
Bruce, if I can, I had a couple of things that have happened in the past week having to do with town meeting warrant articles. Last June, the town approved a plan to look at a different kind of dredging. Disperse the material and put it back in the stream flow up to Duck Creek. This is for the North Harbor Channel. We have set out some requests for quotations, working with Rebecca Slick, who is the town assistant town manager, and also she's also the purchasing agent. The other thing that's up is we've also got on our agenda is what we call a new Curley report. It's a survey of harbor life, and the Board of Selectmen approved that for the December town meeting with the same identical language as for the spring town meeting. The question is whether the town really feels comfortable to fit it in the budget. That's a question for the town administrator. Bruce, I was trying to remember, did this committee approve a recommendation for that last
think-
spring?
I'm quite sure we approved both of those, John.
Yes.
Mhm.
They were
We did.
brought in, I think we recommended for both of them.
If you all feel comfortable and what will be on the December warrant was identical to the one which was dropped from the June warrant because of funding issues, I'd like to be able to reuse your recommendation.
Okay,
If it goes to the spring, it's likely to be a different kind of warrant article. It's likely to be based on not the town grant, lending, which means it would have to also be on the election ballot. The town administrator, for very good reasons, didn't want to have another election in December. So we're just waiting to be seen how that's going to move forward.
so you can either use the old recommendation, or if you have it right in front of you to read, we can vote on it again today.
It's not on the warrant article, so I'll just go with the old recommendation.
Okay.
If,
Okay.
as I say, if it shows up again in the spring, we shall be back. Because it'll be a different article. It'll be a loan article, not a direct pay article.
And John, if I can ask for clarification on the alternate dredging method,
Yeah,
that's to do with the black custard.
that's using the black custard,
Okay,
dispersing it and allowing it to flow up toward Duck Creek. And we've
Okay.
identified about 4 Cape Cod firms who could help us with that, and we'll see if they bite.
okay.
Yeah, they're very exciting, I think, with it.
John, what is the technology on that?
What? I don't understand what you mean.
Are you gonna pipe it up and blow it around, or are you gonna just put it into the water?
Okay. We take the material, the black custard off the bottom with what's called suction pumping.
Yep.
That's likely to be what happens. Then it has to be dispersed, which is a critical part of the whole puzzle. When people ask how to do that, I say, well, think about your kitchen waring blender, but on a larger scale. But that needs to be proven. And then we just pump it out to the east end of the North Channel on a, let's say, on a flood tide, and let the tide just carry it upstream and dispose of it in the way that tides are doing now.
Yep, okay.
Both the harbor master and I believe that because of the material, the black custard and other materials getting trapped, that the Duck Creek marshes are actually a little lower than some of the others. So building them back up again makes sense.
Well, part of the request for proposal, John, isn't to see what these engineering companies come up with as feasibility, how you
Tom,
would actually do it.
there's 2 pieces. One is, how do you do the dispersion in a practical engineering way? And then how do you fit the pieces together? And I think the first question is the hard one. We shall see.
Okay, moving on. The subcommittee for the 5-year plan, I'm delighted to say, has been meeting, and lots of activity. And anybody want to say anything about them?
Got to leave, Bruce. Thank you.
Okay, see you later, John.
Hi, John.
Bye.
Done.
I'll just remind you that the subcommittee, that we are meeting Thursday at 2:30. I think the weather's going to be much better than today. We're welcome to meet again on my deck unless Fred wants to offer his
Sure.
porch.
Our deck and the screened-in porch are both available.
Okay.
I do apologize, but I can't come, it turns out, to that Thursday meeting. So I have gone over both the stuff done by John and Peggy. I can send that in, or if you want to, if we could meet earlier, I could do that, but I'm not able, unfortunately, to come at that time. But I will send over the information if you want to meet at the same time. or-
That would be helpful. I'd appreciate that.
Yes, and I'm going to be away for about 2 weeks, so I can't suggest that we postpone it.
No, I think it's a good thing. And like I say, I actually have been over the stuff you put in the format and just starting on some of John's. So I will get that sent over.
Okay.
Okay,
So
next.
that'll be Thursday at 2:30 at Fred's.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Next is just to remind people again and try to pitch for some way to do it. I said I was leaving in November. I'm willing to stay until February, but then we go down to Florida for 3 months. And so just to ask again, that we can, if worst comes to worst, we can just turn this over to the Board of Selectmen, and what comes of it comes of it. But if anyone is willing either to rotate it, to do a co-chairmanship and something like that, that I would definitely be willing to be a part of that. And but I just, we're going to be away enough. We have some other family issues and some things going on that are really making it difficult for me. Well,
I think a number of us are going to be away.
go
I
ahead.
think a number of us are going to be away in February, March.
Yeah. That's probably true.
We'd
All
have to
right,
be
so let
zooming
me just put it out there again, and because we have to, hopefully we'll get some leadership. Like I say, I'm happy to be a part of that. I want to remain part of the committee, but I'd like to change what I'm doing. Okay, the titles on properties and COMSCOM, nothing new. The only down thing, and I'm not sure whether it wasn't known back then, is that we don't have access to the AmeriCare person, and Doug Goodley, as I think people know, is leaving.
He is left.
Is left. And so if we can get any help from Mark Robinson or what, I'm committed to working on it, but it'd be great if we could get some help for people who really know how to deal with those deeds. And just to remind people, this is recently in the past, a number of the properties have gotten a land preservation deed, or whatever the name of it is. But for the last number of years, we have not been doing it. I wasn't even aware of it. And so the recommendation is to put the properties in the land court deeds. And I think for those of us who, and all of us have been dealing with the Agar property and, the access to it, unfortunately, the town's not acting all the way through on that has allowed the property to be up into question. So I think it really is something valuable to do. Anything else, Kenny?
It's called Article 97 of the state constitution. And you got a temporary town administrator who should know how that works right now.
Okay. I have to be honest, I get the feeling, Denny, that it is a little chaotic up there right now, but I do hear you. We'll move forward. Okay, so the CPC needs list is next, and Fred sent that around. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at it. You want to lead it, Fred?
My impression is that this list has been resubmitted, reapproved for a number of years. It's basically the list that we talked about. We talked about it as criterion for looking at properties. And so that's why we had trouble with, well, we wanted to eliminate the one about education, but it certainly makes sense as a needs list item. So I think it's a pretty good list, and it's combined with people in conservation. Also, it becomes a conservation open space list is basically what it is. So Michael Fisher wanted us to tell them if we had any suggestions to change it or if we approve it, so that they can talk about it at their Conservation Commission meeting in a couple of days.
As I looked at it, Fred, I noticed in their item 10, which is comparable, I think, in all other ways to our item 9, except for one word, acquire fee simple title or conservation, there's wording is restrictions and our wording is easements. And I don't know whether there is an advantage to either one of those wordings. So in theirs, it's acquire, number 10, acquire fee simple title or conservation restrictions to properties. And in our comparable one, it says conservation easements. And Denny has his hand raised, I think.
Okay, Denny?
In the state of Massachusetts, being the one state out of 50, it's called a restriction. The rest of the states call them easements, and it is a legal term, and it's included in all of the language that goes through the general court, as it's called, otherwise known as the Mass Legislature.
Okay.
So technically, we would be better served to change our wording from easement to restrictions.
Right. Any other comments? Okay. I guess, one of the things I'd like to say is I really like this this list, and I think that, again, when we look for properties, considering the meeting with the housing partnership, what are we looking for? And if the property is ACEC property that's abutting marsh, that is, really everyone should be asking, isn't this something we want to protect? As much as we need the affordable housing, these are the properties that we want to protect. And the other thing I think is that, and one of the things that I haven't liked with the old and reviewing the old 5-year plan, is there's one of the goals is to save 50% of buildable property. I think that's a meaningless goal. I think that, if a property owner comes to Denny and says, gee, I'd like to save some property, that's up to them. And that's a private decision. From my point of view, we should be preserving the properties that meet these criteria. And I personally wouldn't even put a number on how much we should be protecting, but if the properties meet, so I think it's great to have a criteria. I think most of these really are good. And I like the idea of the education and the focus, again, that people have had recently on the education and doing so. So I think it's, I like it.
I do wonder, and we had started with this when we were doing our own criteria, our own guideline. And as you recall, we neutered item 7 a bit. Like theirs is 3 lines long and ours is 8 words. I wonder, should we be going back to wording closer to this protect from development? I know we took that out because we didn't want to raise concerns. So I'm not questioning whether the language that the CPC is used is incorrect. I'm wondering whether we should be re-examining our language.
Right.
And maybe this is saved for another meeting.
Well, just to throw my thoughts into it, I said I agree that, let's eliminate the protect from development, but in the context of the way this is written, I've changed my mind. It's protect from development and for limited and appropriate public access land public access land near the ocean, bay, and ponds. And so it really is a big problem in town. I mean, this is for the shellfishermen, for people who want to get in, land that has been, again, to use the Agar property, is on the land that has been used for years and years and years to allow for public access is being eliminated. And so I've kind of changed my mind, I'll have to say, on that. And some of that is the way that this is written, I think is less.
Maybe that sentence should be rewritten if there's a wordsmith out there. You know, what you're trying to say is you don't want land by the ocean to be developed.
Right.
It's been used for public access.
If it's used for public access. So
Yeah.
we're not even saying there's no piece of land by the ocean that should be developed. But if the way I read this is, if this is a piece of public land where access is involved, then we should be protecting that land and not building on it.
I wonder, I mean, we had Fred's, was it your son-in-law or son, Fred, take a look at this? And ended up, he had suggested adding a comma, but
I like the
again, not
comment
to
too,
be,
Fred, I have to say.
yeah. Well, is it to protect,
The way
Well,
it's written now is
protecting land?
protect the
You're
land.
protecting land near the ocean from development and to allow for, well, that's where we get into. Are you protecting the land from development and to ensure limited and appropriate public access? Or are you qualifying that it's land that currently has public access?
It
And I
seemed to
think
me,
that's where the question comes in.
it seemed to me, why I questioned it in the first place, was that the purpose was to protect public access. And incidentally, if you do that, then you're preventing development. So why bother putting development in there, which is just a word that raises hairs of some people who think that's all we're out to do is stop development. So I don't know. I guess maybe I'm reading too much into it, but.
This
How about
is-
just saying protect public access land near ocean, bay, and pond?
Exactly. I thought that's the way we ended up with it.
Right, okay.
Well, we actually took out the public access in our version.
I
So
would
it
put
ended,
the
well,
public
we did protect
access,
for, yeah, protect for public access land near ocean, bay, and pond, yeah.
right.
So we like that? Well, should we first, I'm sorry, Fred, I mean, Bruce, I just kind of took us off. Did you want us to first vote on the CPC?
Well, no, I think
And
they're
then-
asking us for our opinion on the CPC. And, I was saying in kind of rethinking this, well, maybe I don't dislike the development as much, but I'm hearing other people say, that what we have written says the same thing and without the red flag. And so, I mean, I hear that. And so if we're going to, if that's going to be our one recommendation, we did work on it a lot before, let's, do that. And just because when we vote, we're going to, it's not just a yes or no, I would suggest if it's a no, it's a no with, this is how we'd like to change it.
I'm just wondering whether, because of things that were happening with the select board right around the time we were examining this, I feel like I, for one, was backing away a bit from the development. But if another town committee has that in their language and we don't, it seems to be we're missing an opportunity.
I mean, another way of saying that is, this is an opportunity to be in support of what they're trying to get done. And I think it makes sense to have development in that line just because that is of concern. But you're right, this may be a wordsmithing opportunity.
Bruce,
Denny, sorry.
as I listen to this, and I don't have the words in front of me, but one of the things that strikes me is that you're trying to protect land that has great conservation values.
Right.
And rather than just saying protect land from development, why don't you talk about the land that has the conservation values or the access, but not unrestricted land. So.
Yeah, well, this one, no, I do hear you. I mean, I'm really hearing everyone, and I think it's very reasonable. In other words, can you eliminate that? And I think the thing, what this focuses on really is the public access near ocean, bay, and ponds. And that's a critical issue. There's a committee that's looking at access. And so I really hear the point that if that's what you do is put that in and don't talk about the development, you're essentially saying the same thing, I think.
Do you intend that access to be including private land or just public land?
Well, again, there's a piece of property over by the Aggers that whether it's public or private, my guess is that right now it would be considered private land. I think that property should be public land, and if the town, it's not our decision as to whether to act on that, but I think it would be good if the town did it. And then if it did, I think we would certainly, we've voted for that Agger property several times, and then we'd vote for the property, not probably to put it into conservation because the Conscom has had problems with it, but to maintain access for shell fishermen and for kayakers and other people. So,
well, my point is that if you're chasing after private land, then you're getting into taking of private property and all that. And I think you have to be careful of your words.
Yeah.
well, what do people want to do with this?
Well, I would recommend we approve these, the needs list as is. It's been approved in the past by both conservation and us, and I don't see any need to change it. Now, the fact that we did, when we were looking at this more as a way of how do we look at properties, so it was a criterion list, then I thought that's when we begin to look at words, how are they going to be interpreted? But I think as far as a needs list, it's fine the way it is. And I would recommend we approve it.
Other people?
May I say one suggestion that I'm not sure was made about number 7?
Yeah. Mhm.
Denny came close. Protect land near ocean, bay, and ponds for limited and appropriate public access.
Sounds good to me.
That removes the development from there.
Yes.
But I think, Denny, your point was that if you're doing the one, it by extension includes the other.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, should we make the suggestion that change be made? What do you think, Fred?
That's fine, we can do that.
Okay.
I think the fact that we've been struggling with this to really understand not only what we want to do, but what this document is saying, and we're struggling 6 months later or 5 months later, it seems anything we could do to make it clearer. And I think that wording that Lynn proposed, with or without the words from development.
So you want to say it one more time, Lynn, and we'll.
Protect land near ocean, bay, and ponds for limited and appropriate public access.
Sounds good.
Sounds very good.
Sounds good to me too.
Well, I'll just stir you guys up.
No more.
Can you put a parking lot there? How would that be perceived in your words?
Isn't that taken care of in other other items on this list?
They're gonna pave Central Park and make it a parking lot.
Put up a parking lot.
Right.
Not in the parking lot.
You know, I just want you to be thinking about that because somebody's gonna say that.
Okay.
And in fact, in Orleans, this has come up, as people may
Yep.
know, but there's some property that was put into conservation, and the Board of Selectmen, as I understand it, were interested, and certainly some people in town are interested in putting a parking lot there. So there is some conflict with that. That is not just a theoretical issue.
Well, when you're talking about access, you're talking about getting to the access. And that means cars.
Okay, I'll throw out an alternate wording. And this is where we get all tangled up again. Protect, I don't know whether this addresses your concern, the flag you're raising, Denny. Protect from development, land near, blah, 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 to ensure limited and appropriate public access. So instead of just for, to ensure or to allow.
I always like allow versus insure because nobody can insure anything around here.
So it'd be protect from development, land near ocean bay and ponds to allow for limited and appropriate public access.
Okay, what do people think about that one?
I don't know. I still
hate to
think
put
that
this back on the back burner again.
we're back where we started from.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, this is,
So I think we should, again, Peggy's added a little change. What do people think?
And they want our comments so they can meet tomorrow at 4, right?
I think it's the day after tomorrow, but was it tomorrow? I can't remember.
The 6th, yeah.
That's probably a Wednesday.
Yeah.
It is tomorrow.
The thing with this is, I think, I hear the pluses and minuses, but the bottom line is we've looked at it's important. I mean, I really think that one of our pitches for the land we want to save is in these recommendations. But at this point, I also feel like, boy, we've done this,
But
just
we're
to
still
come up with-
confused. We're still confused, Bruce. I think
Yeah.
that's
All right,
the problem, is that 5
Right.
months later, we're still looking at it and it still doesn't seem very clear. So to perpetuate that, I'm not saying that this is the right way to clarify it, but
Right.
this is our opportunity.
right. Couldn't you read yours again, Peggy?
Okay, to protect from development, land near ocean, bay, and ponds to allow for limited and appropriate public access.
Do
Yep.
you need from development? Just those two
I'm
words?
just, I'm wondering if, and they would say instead, protect land near ocean, bay, and ponds for limited and appropriate public access.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I,
that
That's
sounds,
good. Okay, what,
I think that works.
that in effect tells you that you're protecting it from development, but you
Right.
don't have to say that,
right,
Right.
which is what
That's-
raised
I
the
think
flag that
that's-
we've been talking about for months.
I think that's what I said, and then Denny brought up,
And Lynn, that was your, yeah,
yeah, but the parking lot came up on that.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I,
But we
let's forget
can't-
about the parking lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I forget.
I wish I could, Tom.
okay, but I think this is a good way to frame it. Do other people,
Yeah.
what, should we take a vote on this?
Let's
I
read it one more
propose we
time.
take a vote.
More
I
time.
move.
What's that? One more time?
Okay, one more time. I want to hear.
Okay,
I'm trying to write it down.
Okay. Protect land near ocean, bay, and ponds to allow for limited and appropriate public access.
Okay, got it.
Because I think limited and
Wow.
appropriate, Denny, at least, I mean, you can argue about what that means, but to build a big parking lot is not limited and appropriate, is what I would argue.
Right.
A little one is appropriate.
Well, I think appropriate's the only word you need. I just shouldn't stir
Yeah.
you guys up. It's yours, but you don't need. Well, there were two words in there.
Limited.
Limited.
Limited. Yeah, just say appropriate.
Okay, what do people think?
That
I like
implies
limited.
limited and it implies protecting from development. So I think that's
Yeah.
good.
I think limited implies just two parking places for parking cars.
Mm.
So are people saying you
Not
like,
a pay lot. I kind of like
I
limited.
think we should vote on it.
Yeah, let's vote on it.
okay, so that's what
What
we're
are we
voting on.
voting on?
Peggy's, all right. All in favor? All against? Okay, so it passes unanimously.
All right. Can we put that one to sleep for a while?
No. That was a tough one. Okay, and access, I actually I wrote a note to John. I have not been involved with that committee recently, but again, just to let them know that that is an appropriate use, as we know from just having passed number 7 of our CPC funds, et cetera, and part of that. The article for transfer to Concom, the articles were passed. It was all geared up for another battle, but it actually, Ryan read it and pushed it through. So it should be going to other committees currently. It's not clear that it'll be done in time for the special town meeting, but if it isn't, we'll deal with it the next town meeting. Okay. So just two things. Mr. Curley's, but maybe to bring up the potential meeting change to 4:30. Liz McDonald, who I think some people know, because she was on the committee before and was an active member, worked very well. And but she works, and in fact, just as Fred pointed out earlier, there are a whole bunch of us who will be gone for several months in the winter, and we really would like to attract some younger people. She's in discussing things with her work. If we could switch that even to 4:30, that would be something that would allow for her to participate. She's worked things out. So I just wanted to bring that up for to see where people are with it.
I'd be fine with moving it later, and if it's even
Yeah.
better, 5 o'clock, if that would be better.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with moving it.
Fine.
Neither.
John?
Oh,
Okay.
I said I didn't have a problem with moving it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, I don't know if we need an official vote. Is anybody opposed to it?
I'd interpret that that's in the chair's discretion to set the next meeting. Whatever that is.
Point well taken, Denny. We'll move with that. Okay. The only other thing, we don't have time to do it today, but I wanted to bring it up again. I did send out Ryan Curley's suggestions around how to proceed with the inspection of town property if we did that. I like the idea, but Fred's doing it sort of on his own, and seeing where things are. Ryan's approach is to kind of say, let's look at the land, break it down into a high priority, low priority, et cetera. His priority is clearly to kind of take a look at whether land is being compromised, and I think that's a very reasonable thing to look at. I don't disagree with that at all. But I think it's also an opportunity, if we're going to do it, to take a look at what the housing partnership was talking about, and that is there land out there that we've missed? You know, not very much if there is, but is there land that might be appropriate for affordable housing or for open space? If we missed some for open space, and to do a look at all the properties, I think would allow for that. Did people get a chance to look at his criteria?
Bruce, can I just say that I think you're using the wrong data set. He's going back to the consulting firm from a couple of years ago. You ought to get the data from Nancy.
Okay.
And I tried to print out the report, you know, he gave us 2 links and I didn't get very far. You get an opportunity to print out 3 pages and then you have to download the next 6 and then you download the next, and it's a very long document. So I just did a few as samples just to get an idea of what it contained. But, and if you look at it, you know that one of the things, it's like, know all ye men by this, you know, it's the original documentation on the properties and how it came to be held.
Right.
So just looking through this document, my questions, I agree that it would be, I think, worthwhile to have some systematic way to go about reviewing the properties. I just wondered, how does his criteria match with what we've currently been doing? First of all, how would we apply his criteria to all of these town properties? You know, how big a yeoman's task is that to look at all the properties and say, well, this one belongs in this category and this in another. And then if we mapped it on what we've been doing, we being Fred primarily, how much overlap is that? Or are we doubling the amount of work, the number of properties? And if we were to do this and report infractions or what happens? Because I think we were discussing at the subcommittee that Fred has filed reports and they go into a black hole. So is this a lot of work that may not actually be acted on? So those are my 3 points.
Let me just with
I know we can't discuss it tonight.
well, just to talk a little bit about it, people can go back to the drawing board, but he's asking, certainly I think, you know, we can get a list from Nancy that is simple and move forward and make a decision. He's, you know, this from my perspective is a one-time, it's a one-off. You know, I would not sign us up for this on an ongoing basis, but at least to get us do a survey. So one of the reasons the Open Space Committee was formed to begin with, and so to go back to that, I think is really reasonable. Again, Ryan's criteria really have to do with his agenda, which is to look at the property and make sure that there isn't any misuse, et cetera. The fact that our communication with the CONSCOM should be better than it is true, but we do have that connection is there. Here, it's not even clear who we're answerable to, presumably the Board of Selectmen. But, you know, we really have to be clear about that. And we have to be clear about what we're taking on. And I personally, you know, to do this once is to do a survey and take a look at it and look at it, and presumably to do it, sign on to an ongoing basis is way more than just because of what you just said, Peggy, that we're having enough trouble not doing the work of checking it, but making sure that things get done is a challenge, even doing what we're doing with CONSCOMs. I don't want to do that. Anyway, any other comments on this?
It seems like it could be a potentially huge project, but worth looking at to start with anyway, but not, as you say, ongoing. But
well, you know, I think some of it depends on how, you know, it really is dividing up the properties, and he's got his way of looking at things. But, you know, I don't think we need to go to every single property that's there. I think there's some properties that are very clearly, anyway, leave it at that. Anything else on this? Otherwise, we'll postpone it to next time. Okay.
Nothing else there.
All in favor of adjournment?
I'm- Aye.
Any opposed? That was easy.
That's at 5:16.
5:16. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right,
Goodbye.
thank you all.